It's Spoilerin time, folks. This is the show where we take the hard work of talking about getting shows through hardware and software and services on Cordkillers. And then we come over here to Spoilerin time and we talk about having watched them and what we thought. This week, we're going to spoil The Boys, episode 6 of season 2, Lovecraft Country, episode 7 of season 1, and Star Trek Lower Decks, first season, 8th episode. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian. What?
You're half right. I'm Bryce Castillo.
Bryce and Brushwood.
That's right. That's
no?
right. Bryson Brushwood.
No, Brian is taking care of his family today because they had a little COVID. Well, I almost had a COVID scare, but they actually got COVID. He and Bonnie. Kids are fine. He and Bonnie seem to be fine as well. They're on the mend. But yeah, so because he is doing what he absolutely responsibly should and resting up and taking care of his family, it's just me and Bryce today.
Yeah, but we got 3 great shows. They're going to be awesome. What do you want to start with, Tom?
Let's start with Star Trek Lower Decks. The first question I saw on Twitter before I'd even watched this was, I can't wait to hear Bryce's countdown of Star Trek references he didn't get. Because, man, and when I watched it, I was like, oh, I get what they're talking about. This episode was full of them. Really? I still don't know how essential they were to understanding the show, but there were a lot of them in this one.
I remember feeling like... I did not know. In fact, this was an episode where I walked away feeling like, oh, maybe there weren't a lot of references. And so it's interesting to hear that there were a lot. I do want to feel like I gave it, all of my attention. There's maybe a 20% chance I wasn't, but I was following along. It was doing the trial. So tell me about this trial. Like, has there a Star Trek episode that did this setup?
So many of them. There's like, I could think of at least 3 off the top of my head, and I'm going to guess there maybe been a dozen like this. The famous one is Star Trek, where it's not a trial, it's combat. They capture Star Trek officers in the original series and bet quatloos on which one's going to win a battle against another captured alien. There's also Q, who you saw, John Delancey, the person who played Q on The Next Generation, voiced Q in this episode. Q puts humanity on trial in the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation and continues that theme throughout The Next Generation. There's a few others, but yeah, the idea of a trial and a weird alien race that you weren't familiar with being part of the trial, and this sort of like, you will be immediately punished if you do not cooperate. That was all like rich Star Trek lore being mined there.
It was so interesting because I couldn't do anything but assume, like, okay, they've probably done trials like this in this probably exact same setup before. And I feel like I didn't miss really anything. Even the Q was like the board games freak, right? Like, he was that little weird guy on the who shows up.
Sure. Yes. No, you're right. That's not how I would have ever described him, but your description is accurate in this case. Yes.
Okay. I was pretty sure that was one of the guys, because I remember hearing Q from Osmosis, but the rest of it, I just felt like, okay, yeah, this is the way that they're gonna kind of tell a story like this.
And the Gorn wedding, there's a very famous Gorn fight with Kirk in the original series.
Okay. So then how did you feel? So I feel like I actually went by pretty unscathed with this. How did you feel about all these references, Tom?
I thought it was a blast, but mostly because of the way they played with the tropes and the references. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing this. And I was like, I don't know where they're going with this. Like, why would the Lower Decks folks be picked to be, put on trial? Why aren't we hearing from the officers? And then at the end, when they reveal, like, this was all a surprise party, it was a celebration, the officers were in on it, they knew, and the Lower Decks folks ruined it. I thought it was brilliant. It was classic.
It definitely did a good job of making me pick a side, which is like, why couldn't you just say say that it was a part? Like, obviously, right. Well, you put them in eels. You put them in the eels.
Yeah, but then they never did get hurt by the eels, right? So yeah, no, it was a silly premise from that respect. Like, of course they would have told them, like they would never have done it that way,
Yeah.
but it made it funnier, right?
Yeah, this really felt like something. This episode, ironically enough, just made me feel like, okay, we're like pushing away from IP. Looking at it now, I guess it makes sense that there are these big tentpole parts of the script that are very reliant on Star Trek's aesthetic and brand and stuff. But
I wonder if part of it is that Star Trek is so embedded in general television and science fiction mythology that you got a lot of those references subliminally, right? Even though you didn't really realize where they were coming from.
Right. And I guess that's a positive to me, right? Where I'm not spending time thinking like, oh, okay, what am I missing here? Because they're landing and they're landing with enough context, which is really important, right? I think it's fine if there's a million references, but as long as I don't feel like, okay, what is the thing that everyone else is laughing at?
Yeah, I don't understand the situation because I don't get a reference. It doesn't seem like they ever have that happen, or at least not very often.
Yeah, I mean, nothing egregious, I guess, is the big thing. I did sort of feel a little swimmy about halfway through this episode of like, okay, well, and now that I think about it in terms of this conversation, like, well, of course that they're going to do it, but part of me was just like, well, why don't they just ask what they want, and then the lower decks just tell them what they want to know?
Well, and I was thinking the same thing, and I knew all the references. I'm like, well, I guess the reason is they want to make all these jokes, right? But the reason was it's a silly premise. It's lower decks, and they just wanted to have it be funny. Like, what if they didn't ask them what they really wanted to know?
Yeah.
And then what did you think of the side quests? Like the backstories of like Tendi, accidentally, wanting to clean cat fur off the chairs and getting pulled in as the fixer on the secret mission.
That was really great.
That was awesome.
Entire branch was really funny. The like faux censoring, and then just like at the end, the complete like abandonment of trying to censor. They would wait for the censor to end, and then they would say it seemed like the word that they were supposed to like. Yeah. That was just really, really funny, and it speaks a lot to her character, right? Like that would be a great character like introduction bit of just like, oh yeah, I was cleaning up, and then I got caught up in this mercenary thing, and also I was kicking a bunch of ass, which was kind of kind of what the android guy's story was a little bit too, right? He going in and out of consciousness. Yeah. Rutherford. It was kind of his in and out of consciousness bit, and being, a crazy android ninja when he was asleep. It was kind of
when he wasn't conscious, the program took over and he was amazing, but we never got to see any of it, which I thought was also hilarious.
Yeah. Overall, like really solid, and I think my concern about it feeling swimmy at the end or in the middle of it was actually resolved by the fact that like, no, we're not, they're like literally not even talking about the same thing. Like it's not a trial, it's a party, and they were supposed to say nice things and they said bad things, and like that resolved itself in a way that wasn't too reliant on here's the Romulans, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what was playing there that was something that referred to the series was the ongoing idea throughout, especially the original series and Next Generation, that the Federation had solved its problems. This was Gene Roddenberry's command to his writers, was like, you can't have conflict come from humans. We are imagining a world where the humans have fixed their problems, and they're going off into the universe now to explore, and they will run into conflicts out there, but you can't have the conflict come from the humans because they've fixed everything. And that maxim has broken down slowly throughout the successor shows since Gene Roddenberry has passed, but they're all very sensitive to it. They all always try to justify why they're breaking it. And this was, hitting it with a battering ram and saying like they want to pretend like there's nothing wrong, but we're human and people make mistakes and that's fine. And it was an interesting meta commentary in that respect.
Yeah. That I did not know that. That's an extra it's an extra great layer to this. The idea of like, oh, the human species. I mean, these people are in Starfleet, so they're dealing with problems all the time. They're not seeing that's what they signed up for. But it would be interesting to see what would happen, what life looks like on Earth in a world with no conflicts, and then conflicts arise, and you're a species that has never had Now I'm doing the Brian thing, and I'm coming up with new ideas. I don't.
It would be cool.
We need a metaphor here to top it off.
We've got an email, a couple emails here. 2 quick points from listeners about Lower Decks and the dilemma we detailed on where do you go with the characters who are intent on not advancing. Ryan described Mariner's position as a catch-22, stuck between wanting to have fun and be helpful with the freedom that comes from having limited power. Ryan even mentions her quote from the most recent episode, "The captain already knows that she wants you what she wants you to do, so just nod and agree with her, or we'll all end up getting kicked off the ship, and then we'll have to live on Earth where there's nothing to do except drink wine and hang out at vineyards and soul food restaurants," which is a reference to like, other than time travel, the only time people ever go to Earth, they either hang out at Picard's vineyard or Captain Sisko's dad's soul food restaurant.
Okay, and then I wondered if that was a thing in the Picard show. Like, okay, I know he's on a vineyard for some of it. That was like the poster.
Yes.
Did he also love? Yeah. Did he love his crawfish?
He owned a vineyard. The Picard vineyard is his family's land. Mm. Yeah. And then John mentions Lower Decks could be a vehicle to continuously flow in and out of new ensigns from the Academy while still following the original crew. That's interesting. John also says Mariner will eventually accept her role as an officer or captain and is sure the writers will find a way to resolve her conflict. I don't know about that. I don't know if I want Mariner to make captain. Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's kind of the Stranger Things problem, right? It wasn't maybe this is apocryphal, but wasn't the idea like, oh, Stranger Things was going to be an anthology show, but people loved the characters so much that they kept setting it.
I've heard that. I don't know if that's true either. Yeah, but I've heard that, and it kind of makes sense, even if it isn't true.
And I think that they've done such a good job of creating very distinct characters and characters that are kind of filling all of the quadrants basically here. So I wonder what you do to use new characters. I think that's an interesting problem to have.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Star Trek Lower Decks?
No, a really solid episode this week.
Let's talk about Lovecraft Country, episode 7 of season 1, where we get Hippolyta, a Hippolyta episode. I knew from the trailer that she was going to be in this a lot, but I didn't realize it would be predominantly her. We get a little from Tick. As he goes to St. Louis and then to Kansas City. But most of this was the Hippolyta story.
This, looking online a little bit about people's reactions and looking up discussion, like this felt like a divisive episode a little bit between the novelty of having Hippolyta, who has been a character who hasn't really had much screen time at all, getting kind of a very prominent amount of screen time and what might seem to be kind of a finality of her story, along with like, okay, well, we don't really have a lot of emotional attachment to Hippolyta, and her storyline was like, I would say it's like 50-50 on this episode between her story, which is great but kind of short, and I agree with that, and Tick dealing with as Andrew called it on Weird Things, the Harry Potter part of the story.
Yeah, the finding the book of names and all of that. And then at first I was like, I don't remember this observatory. And then when the portal opened, I was like, oh, right. That's right. I remember now that this happens in the books. I didn't imagine it when I read it in the books the way they depicted it, but I thought they depicted it really well. And granted, we haven't really seen Hippolyta's story much, but do we need to? I mean, she's the mother of these children in this world, and her husband is dead. I mean, if there's a problem with that, it's a problem with this whole series where we're not taking a linear narrative. We're jumping around from place to place.
I think where the way that I would couch my argument on this is that I don't think she needs more context or backstory. I don't think we needed to go back into any previous episode and put in more Hippolyta scenes. But I would say that her story this week felt a little compact. It felt a little rushed. If this is a huge journey that she's going on across time and space and parallel worlds, fourth dimensions, whatever, I want to feel the scale of that story. We saw these 3 great vignettes of her having these different experiences, but even this is now me coming up synthesizing new ideas, but give me like a montage of her bang 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 bang. It's just shots of her having many lifetimes of experiences, because then that makes her decision to say, I'm going to ascend beyond humanity from my current time. That makes that sell better to me, because I felt weird about that at the end, with that being her decision.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. That's perfectly reasonable. And I love that idea of like, what if we showed flashes of her doing other things? But you're not supposed to believe that she spent a lot of time or traveled for very long, right? She steps through the portal and she's there. That's the way it's supposed to be. She has these experiences and they're compressed. She feels like she's there with Josephine Baker for a long time, but she's not. She's not gone for very long. So I think they were trying to convey that this didn't take a long time. It just felt that way to her.
But I feel like it doesn't. I don't actually care about as the objective time as much as her lived time, right? She has this experience in France. She has this long training montage, and they even make a point of like putting all of the random time and space numbers on the screen through that whole training fighting montage. And I don't know. It really is good. And don't take this as me like not digging this. I love this. I love like going off the walls, and we don't know if the other entity that she was talking with in the spaceship or the space base, we don't know if that's a human.
Well, it's on the beach. She lands on that beach,
right?
And then she goes into that building, and that's where she meets Donna Summer.
Right. Well, and like, that's fantastic. That's incredible. That's like another huge left turn for this show. And those things are great. I really do like those things. And I think that it's like, it takes a lot of courage to write a story like that and do that with a character who like is been kind of ancillary so far. I think it's I had to get used to the Space Donna Summer look, but I'm like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't this alien appear to her in that way? She's appearing to her in a form that in the 50s would appear futuristic, even though it looks retro to us, right? Yeah. I love the Josephine Baker sequence. That was fantastic. It was like, oh, we get a little period piece. This is great. And I thought the Josephine Baker character and the whole scenario was believable. And I understood that Hippolyta was there longer than she really was and was living that life. And then when she goes to be the warrior, I'm ready to accept that. Okay. And now she's going through a different experience and she's learning to battle. I felt like they gave us a little short shrift by just making the battle appear a little easy. Well, that was strange because it initially seems very easy, and then you see them over,
and then you see the second wave coming. Yeah. So I was a little confused, and maybe I just missed the point there. Her showing up with George, I was like, okay, so she found her inner artist, she found her inner warrior. Now she's finding her inner wife. And her role and why she shouldn't have compromised. And I thought that was all great. Like, yes, George should have stepped up and acknowledged, like, I'm taking advantage of you. She should have also. And so she's learning. I was like, okay, all these stories are working for me. I'm getting something out of them. Then she showed up with a hoop skirt with planets on it, and I was like, "Oh man, this is so cartoony." I know it's supposed to be because again, it's the way space was conceived of in the time. It's period appropriate, but like her just like hanging out with the space hoops on. That's where it lost me.
Wait, that didn't play for you? She was being if I say Nithya Blue, she was the girl from her daughter's
I know, and I know she was in a comic, and so she was supposed to look comic-y, but everything else had felt so real that one was like, it was harder for me to swallow because it was so not real.
Okay, interesting. And I think that is a casualty of lacking a little more context with her. I mean, we get a shot of her seeing, in the picnic basket, she actually did make a little comic book. And that's how she gets the George connection with the burnt down mansion.
Yep.
But you're right. We don't get it. The last time we heard her talking about this comic book, beyond opining that there might not have been one in this episode, was like episode 1, where they're talking about the checklist. So
right. The checklist, when the little girl's like, yeah, I don't want to do the checklist. I'm like, I totally buy that. Good real moment.
Yeah.
Shows that, there's some strife in the family and that makes sense. But like the checklist should have said like, she should have looked at it and like, well, maybe there's no comic book this time, like just some throwaway line that would have reminded me of that. I think I would have liked that.
To show how much she cares about this comic book, especially because the last time one was made, it was made for George and Dick.
Right.
It wasn't even for her. So that I can see that of that feeling like a weird choice for her. Maybe that was the last bit of her humanity that she could remember after all these lifetimes. We're not quite sure.
I felt cheap. It didn't feel like, I'm seeing a comic book come to life. It felt like, this is what was in the prop closet.
It's right. It's the ratty way of retrofuturism we would make today to make something look out of date.
Which they did so good with the Josephine Baker stuff. So I can't imagine it's a budget, right? I don't know. I don't know. I think it was a choice they made that I don't like, and that's fine. I don't have to like them all.
So how do we think she decided to ascend, right? She decided not to come back. I mean,
we will find out, won't we?
Oh, right, because you've read the books. This is no good talking to you about this. What about the stuff with Tick? I know he ends up in the Doctor Who soundstage with the portal and all at the last minute.
Yeah, in the observatory.
Yeah. But what was the rest of it? He was talking to his...
He went to St. Louis to meet with the woman who had lived with his cousin, who he suspects was the last one to have the Book of the Names.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, sorry, honey, that's all gone now." So it seems like it's a dead end. But there's the implication that like, maybe that's a lie or maybe that's a cover up. Who knows?
Okay. Books.
Well, because here's another thing where I'm not sure they're doing enough to make this hit hard enough, even though they set it out right. But if they find the Book of Names, it's game over. They will have the power. I
recognize, like I agree. They have made a very many explicit points to say magic is real. If you control magic, you will rule this world, right? And even in this episode, they say like, we're looking at we've been looking at the pages of a book, which are one thing. If we get the book, it'll teach us how to say magic. Like, I guess, man. But all the steps of it are just
right.
We got to go to a library and have some off-screen time travel.
Well, and the orbital thing that I had forgotten she had taken it. The little planetarium thing that she had, like, this is where telling it in a more anthology way does break things for me. Like, they laid all the groundwork for that. We saw it in the house. We saw Hippolyta see it and get a greedy look.
There's a scene a couple of weeks ago of her seeing it in her apartment.
Yep. But those are all so disconnected. I had forgotten that by this episode because we spent all last episode in South Korea, right?
How structurally different is this show compared to the book? Because we've talked before about like how the book is kind of episodic. Is this like wildly different?
It's not wildly different, but it's almost like they should have, and this may have resulted in disaster. Who knows? Maybe they tried it and they're like, yeah, that doesn't work. But I almost feel like they should have taken the book and created a new linear storyline out of it. Instead of what they did is they're like, well, we have these major stories in the book, so let's break them up into pieces that are episode sized. It's a tough book to adapt. Just got to tell you.
I thought this was a fine episode. I don't know. I tend to watch the next week ons for this show.
Yeah, me too.
HBO always does only 3 episodes left.
Boom, boom, boom.
And it made me go like, okay, this is probably not a mini series, so we're probably not even going to, I don't know how much resolution we're going to get in wrapping this season up. But it didn't make me feel like, I'm not excited.
They haven't played enough into. I think that's the thing. Yeah, because I'm loving the series. Don't get me wrong. I'm picking on things because there are things to pick on. But I think it would be even better if they were making more of the central mystery, so that I would be excited. Like, gosh, are they going to find the book? Is that going to solve their problem? Can we trust Christina? Because all of that stuff is there. It's just maybe, I don't know, maybe it's me, but it's not. I have to kind of remind myself, oh, right, the book is important. Because again, Meet Me in Daegu was a fantastic episode, but it distracted me from some of the main quest lines. And I know it will play into them later, but there's a lot of this like, okay, I'm going to have to do work as a viewer to remember what I saw in South Korea, because it's going to come back into play. Just like this episode, I had to remember what Hippolyta had done. I had to remember what the Book of Names was, because it was now essential.
Yeah, it feels like having your cake and eating it too a little bit. Like I really dug the first 2 episodes, because it felt like, oh wow, like this is not a big thing. They've started with a showstopper with this, what would seem like a season finale on any other show, and we kept getting these great episodes of a week, and now it's getting near the end and we have to care about the little crumbs that they were leaving us, and we never needed them. And now what do you do? Because give me more anthology. Give me more. Hey, screw the book. The book got burnt. Magic's done. Whatever. Give me more of these little stories, because this stuff. Yeah,
maybe that would have been a better way to go. Just make it more in the world of Lovecraft Country.
Yeah,
and I think what would have been more true to the book is if you did like a 3-episode arc, and then a 3-episode arc, and then a 3-episode arc, because that's the way it felt for me as I remember it reading it.
Right. It's just the one-off episode, or the one-off stories, to me have a way better hit rate. Like I think they've all I think that they've all been really fantastic. They've had great parallels to the social issues that they're talking about. They look great. A good blending of genres, right? We had like kind of core sci-fi this week.
It sings horror as an authentic period piece, and then this week it was like, ooh, and now we're getting sci-fi, and we got horror. Like, let's bring in the genre elements. I love that.
Well, also one last thing, because Beatmaster reminds me about this. While we're talking about some of the overarching character stuff, I really don't know what we're doing with this thing with Atticus and his father. I thought his father kind of just being surprisingly portrayed as being shown to be gay or queer a few weeks ago felt really left field, and I thought, okay, well, maybe the next time we do this, we're really gonna we did get a good scene with him and the man he was sleeping with, but then Tick has a big fight and it's good emotional drama. But I feel like, what are we doing with these characters? Like Tick has so much hate for his father. It's not like there's a big push. I'm not feeling the push and pull between like he's family and you gotta love him, which I think is what they're trying to portray. And this person is like really screwed up my life as a child to today. Why is this person in my life? I'm not feeling that fight between, and this bit is not selling that for me. I don't know.
All right. I'm definitely feeling the fight. But
I feel the fight. I feel the effect. I don't feel the cause. I feel like, okay, just stop.
Oh, you want like a flashback scene showing him and his relationship with his father to kind of set a
what's the good
premise
times,
or something?
Right? What are the good times we're trying to save here? Because it's
there aren't any. No, there's no good times.
Okay. Well,
no, I don't think we're supposed to believe there were good times. I think Tick is holding on to the idea that, it's his father, so he should love him. But I don't think there was any. I don't think there was a lot of good times for them, and that's been the whole point from the very beginning. And maybe that's colored by knowledge I'm bringing in from outside the show. I don't know.
I see. Well, I don't know. I feel like with a conflict like this, I need to see what makes it so conflicting. I need to see kind of why there's this, why there are two contrasting fights about this, and he's even bothering with his father anymore because he
has to bother with his father because his father has the clues.
I thought he burned.
Otherwise, he would.
I thought he burnt that book. His father does. Well, I guess. Well, it just I don't know. I'm having a weird thing with that whole storyline.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is Lovecraft Country, episode 7, season 1. Let's talk about The Boys, episode 6 of season 2, The Bloody Doors Off. I love this episode. It was all taking place at the Sage Grove Center for the most part, with a few things happening over at the movie set with Homelander. But I really loved Starlight and the boys finding Jimmy Olsen from Smallville, lamplighter inside, and this idea that they are keeping all these people in the hopes that maybe they can figure out how to infect everyone with Compound V someday.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of a fun faux bottle episode. I've been feeling like we've had a lot of like trapped in the building episodes, but I think this one has like a lot of flavor. Seeing all of the different kind of discarded Compound V experiments and them breaking out and I thought that ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, I loved the set piece, like you said, the bottle episode. Obviously, we got a little of Frenchie's backstory, more of Frenchie's backstory, but in a directly related way to what they were doing. And we actually saw Frenchie come to a realization, and I thought that was great. And he and Kimiko sort of patched things up. That was believable. The stuff outside of this, Homelander trashing the trailer and then saying it was a gas leak or electrical fire or something like that was sideshow stuff. It didn't bother me, but wasn't terribly compelling.
It was fine.
And then I guess the other thing was A-Train getting tricked into going having some frescas with the Deep at the Scientology Center.
Yeah. So kind of a lot of stuff going on there for the Homelander and Stormfront stuff. I don't know. What did you feel about the position of their relationship at the end of this episode? Because he clearly is like off his rocker a little bit, and
but she knows how to play him. That's what I liked about that end scene. Is like, okay, he's now feeling like, here we go again. I've put my love into someone who's deceived me, and she calls him on that because she knows, like, okay, I can't hide anything with this guy. So I will just tell him my deepest secret. But if you notice, I don't think she tells him about Sage Grove. She, instead of telling him where she went, she gives him the, like, I'm actually a Nazi era first soup, which theoretically is a bigger secret to tell him, but also allowed her to keep the Sage Grove thing under wraps for the moment, which I thought was very clever, because all telling him her real secret is going to do is make him love her more. I think that's her gamble anyway.
I definitely see that. You see the way that they talk about non-soups and her. You see a lot of blending between that and the white nationalism that they talk about.
No, Homelander is growing towards where she came from, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that does she know? Correct me if I'm wrong. Does she know at this point that other people know that she's Liberty? Was that a part of what Starlight told her?
That's what they found. They didn't find the Nazi stuff. They only found that she was Liberty. Yeah. But
rather, does Stormfront know that her identity as Liberty is?
Yeah, because Starlight says something to her about being Liberty.
Okay.
And you know, if you expose me about, you know, knowing what I know, I'll expose you for being Liberty.
Because then at that point, it also makes Stormfront's decision to tell Homelander that she's Liberty. She knows that's coming down the pipe either way.
That might come out anyway if you know, if things go awry with Starlight. So yeah, I would think it was super smart. I like that.
Yeah, I think that they're in an interesting dynamic where she is very deliberate and she knows what she's doing, and he is slowly falling off his rocker and is losing control. It's clear he's starting to lose control. I think
there is an intended parallel to Homelander and, you know, the modern United States, like drunk on power but disillusioned. And the appeal of the old ways brought by Stormlight by Stormfront.
Stormfront, yeah. That all is really interesting. I think that's a really good B plot. I'm starting to lose the thread a little on the C plot with the Church of whatever. It's fine. We're doing a Scientology bit. I don't know the stakes. I don't know the stakes of it yet. Clearly they're powerful. But to what ends?
Yeah, and I think it's just supposed to be kind of a fun, clever mystery. Like, what are they really up to? What do they really want? Why are they collecting soups, discarded soups? Do they want to take over Vought? What's going on there?
Because they do keep like implying, oh, we can put you on the 7. We're going to put you on the 7 if you buy in.
We'll get you back, A-Train. Do you want to get back in the 7 like deep? We can take care of all this for you. And A-Train very reasonably is like, yeah, but I'm good, right? Like short of the ego trip of being in the 7, like things aren't bad for A-Train. He's not like the Deep where he's like on the outs, right?
Yeah. But he was bribed at the end of that scene, right? With all of his other dirty deeds.
Yeah. So they use the stick, not the carrot with A-Train.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not hooked on it yet, but I see that they are having to lay some groundwork on this plot before it evolves, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else on The Boys?
No, I'm enjoying this. This is feeling like a good one thing a week. The Boys.
All right, folks. Thanks for watching Spoilerin Time. Just to keep you up to date, Fargo is on the air, but we will not be talking about it until after we've done talking about Lower Decks, or actually The Boys, I guess, right?
Right. The Boys. I think both of those will end about the same time. Lovecraft. Yeah. Lower Decks and The Boys.
So we'll replace Lower Decks with Fargo in a burst of the first few episodes and then start watching it week to week. We'll also start watching The Mandalorian on October 30th. And Larry Sanders is still there. We'll get back to it. Don't worry. Thanks for supporting us. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. And please tell your friends. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.